Okay, it's time to start building my fourth cycle cart. I've got the design all figured out, and I got my inspiration doing some research on hot rods, and hot rods that ran on the dry lake beds actually. And if I have my history correct, in the early days they weren't called hot rods, they were called modifieds. So anyway, let's move on to my design. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'm pretending that I'm one of those guys from back in the day, and I'm going to take a 1937 Studebaker pickup, and I'm going to modify it. I'm going to chop it, I'm going to channel it, I'm going to section it, and it's going to be modified for speed on the dry lake bed. So it's called a 1937 modified. So here is my inspiration pickup. And what drew me to this was I like the grill. I think I can recreate that. Here's a 37 car, just for extra reference. But I thought that would look neat on the front of a cycle cart, and I like the shape. And of course, it wouldn't have any fenders, and it'd be, you know, highly modified. Still have a pickup bed on it, but there wouldn't be any top. It'd be chopped. So this is my inspiration. So here's my drawing. So, I'm not real good at perspective drawing, but sketch this out and you can kind of get the feel for what's going on here. Narrow front end, Studebaker grill, open wheel, chop top, has the bed. So, anyway, enough of that one. Okay, so this drawing is in the scale of 1.5 inches to the foot, so it's larger on paper, and it gives me a little more room to do detail. So this is a 1937 Studebaker pickup, modified lake racer, designed by D. Thomas. This is a plan view that's looking down on top of it, and you can stop the video and check out these dimensions. You're certainly welcome to build this if you want. Not as many dimensions on the elevation, more detail oriented, but you can see that it'll be 30 inches in height. That's the same as my BMW. 62-inch wheelbase, that's the same as old number 27. 96 inches in length. I'm going to put an exhaust pipe on this one, and you can see how the engine will sit inside the bed, so there'll be a simple removable lid up here and then the header coming out. You know, pretty straightforward, what I'm used to doing. I'm going to recreate this grill. I have some ideas on how to do it, but it'll be fun to try. And I'd like to maybe do a cast aluminum window frame or something. I have to make a new hood ornament for my BMW. We lost it in the dirt, so I want to cast one out of aluminum, make a little foundry and see what I can come up with. So some of the highlights here are like I was saying, 62-inch wheelbase. The front of the frame will be 12 inches. If you look close, you can see the chassis in here. The chassis ends right there. There's the body. And then you can see the body overlaid, and you can see some of the internal components, so you just have to look at it long enough. But 12 inches long, or I'm sorry, 12 inches wide at the front of the chassis, and 18 inches wide at the rear. But the body will be 22. I would like this to have a nice rolled top edge and rounded corners. I'm trying to improve my bodybuilding skills, so we'll see what I can do here. Let's see. Right where my knees will be is 19 inches. And of course, 27 is what I typically use to get in. 27 from the cowl to the, or from the dash to the front, so that's plenty of room. So anyway, it's shaping up pretty good. It's going to be 1x3 steel tube chassis. So I have some steel, and I'm going to chop this thing up and get it welded together. We'll see how it turns out. I'm looking forward to building this. It's going to have a lot of hot rod cues to it by the time I'm finished. And you can count on the fact that it will change from what you see here. Because a lot of what I do, I develop, or comes to me later in the process. But this gets me going, gives me all my dimensions, something I can work from. Okay, let's get to cutting up some steel and make a chassis. Okay, so now my plan is to lay out the chassis, which is superimposed right in here, full size, so that I can cut the steel and lay it over the pattern and weld it nice and straight and true. So that's what I'm going to do now, is lay it out. Starting with the center line. This board is 8 feet long, and of course that's the total length of the car, so works out pretty good. It's 40 inches this way. Okay, so following my drawing, I laid it out. I think you can see that. There's the front, tapers back to here. And there's the end of the chassis. Okay, so from this layout, I made up this little cut list here. These are the parts. And you'll notice there's a slight little angle right there. Well, that's the beauty of a full-size layout, because I can shape the steel over the top. Here's another example. This slight angle right here. So this full-size layout helps get those to fit right. Okay, on to cutting up some pieces. I still have my work clothes on. Let's see if I can bring this steel in without getting all dirty. One by 3 tubing, thin wall. Okay, I have all the parts cut. Now I can knock off the burrs, clean them up, grind on the ends a little bit, and get them to the size of the chassis on the layout. So I cleaned the steel with some lacquer thinner to get the initial oil and dirt off of it. I actually cleaned them twice. I've already wiped these once. That way later when I weld, I'll have a better chance of being successful. I laid the steel pieces over the layout on the board and it fits pretty good. You know, it's square here in the back, so that's pretty straightforward. But here when it tapers, I want to grind a little bit on this piece to get it to fit better. It should be easy to do with this little side grinder or even the belt disc out there. Up front here, this is not straight across here. But I can use this angle finder here to get that straight. And then the end of this needs a little bit of shaping too. I could fill that up with weld, but I'd rather do a nice job, get the joint tight. Then I'll clamp it and start welding it up. Yeah, I'm happy with this little chassis. It's real straightforward and simple. And this will work well with the transverse spring setup, the same thing I have on the BMW. And I like that it has a square or rectangle rear section here. It makes it easier to install the motor and the axles and all that. So, okay, moving on. I'm going to scuff all the pieces with the disc here, just to clean up the steel a little bit. I don't have to do it, but it'll help when I weld, and it'll look better. So I want to put a little angle on the ends of these tubes here, and I could eyeball it up with a side grinder, but I thought I'd try to be a little bit more precise. You see that blue mark there? That's what I have to take off, and you can see this has an angle. So what I'll do is I'll loosen this and set this at that angle. Then I can run this right up against there, and that'll grind off just what I need. I'll have to pay attention not to go too far, because I don't want to change the length per se. Okay, so that's how I'm going to get all these angles on the ends of these tubes. You can see how this is going here. So this has an angle cut on it now, and then it's straight across. Now over here, okay, so I have to take some off, so using the same angle, see how that lines up? So I just take a little bit off there, and then that will be a nice joint. Same thing over there. Okay, so I set up my pattern on some sawhorses here, and I'm drilling some holes. I'm charging my battery right now, but they're so I can insert some clamps, because I want to clamp this right down on top of my drawing. My drawing is square, and if I can get on the lines, then it'll be square. I'll do the same up to here. Get it all clamped down, and then I'll clamp it together with some bar clamps, and then I can tack it up. Alright, a little bit more setup and I'll be ready to weld. All the clamps are in place now. It's clamped down tight and it's clamped together at the front here, in the middle, and at the end. And it's right on my lines. I'm happy with the layout. So that should stay put while I get it all tacked up. I guess I'm ready to start welding. You know, I don't weld that often. So I decided to practice a little bit first. Cut up a couple pieces, and I'm gonna weld the crap out of this little thing till I get my technique a little bit better and get the heat and wire speed right. Then I'll jump onto the frame. So I spent the last half hour practicing my welds, and I've confirmed my earlier suspicions that basically I suck at welding. I played with all kinds of different speeds and heat, and I think I got it set as good as I can get it. So without further ado, I'm going to start welding. This chassis is very similar to the chassis on Old 27, and because there's a joint right here, a welded joint, I made this little gusset plate. It's got a little bit of an angle to it, and I'll clamp it on. I'm going to weld all around it, and then in these holes. I've got it clamped up over on this side. So I've learned that there's a huge amount of stress right here because the axle's right back here, and you know, we run these carts hard. So later I'm going to put a gusset down here too, probably up here. Because on the old 27 chassis, I developed some cracks. So I'm going to overbuild it this time just to be safe. Well, I managed to get the chassis welded together and finished up without making too big a mess. But I'm going to clean up and I'll show you how it came out. Okay, looking good. I'm happy with the way the chassis is looking. Turned out nice and straight. Cleaned up pretty good. I think I'm going to leave the welds in the corners the way they are, not grind them or anything. I added the plate where I welded through some holes and then all the way around. I think that was about a 12 gauge piece of steel. That'll really strengthen it right here. Happy with that. So I have a nice foundation to continue with here. I think I'm going to try to lay out this front end, figure out ride height. Alright, let's go do that. Those of you who follow along with me religiously will remember this is the full-size drawing from the BMW. So on this new car, this is a successful setup. It has good suspension travel and I really like the way the car handles. So I'm going to refine it only slightly. Now back when I did the BMW, this spring came from Engel's Coat Shop, but now Vintage Kart Co, they had some springs made. They're even bushed, which is nice, and that looks like a 3/8 hole. So this is a full-size drawing of the Engel's coach spring. So if I set it over here, it's almost the same distance, slightly different arc. So I have me another piece of this wood. I'm going to draw a full-size layout of the 37 Studebaker. This is important because it goes to the ride height of the body. So I'm looking forward to doing this and using this spring. Okay. So I've been working diligently on the front end of this car here, trying to figure out a bunch of things like the grille and the windshield, the front axle, the spring shackles, all that. So let me show you what I did here. So first I drew a center line here which represented the axle height off the ground right here. Then I had this pattern from the BMW. I really like the axle. I might make it out of lighter steel. All the components were 1/8" steel. Maybe I'll use 12 gauge this time. Try to lighten things up. But as you can see, that fits in there good. I carefully measured each size, and I have a pattern that I used to trace this that I made last time. The shackle, or spindle bracket. Those were 3/4 inch axles. So then I had the spring here from Vintage Kart Co. So I was able to lay that on there, and figuring out the heights and all this, it was easier because I had to do it on the BMW. But you can see that fits in there beautifully. And then, so on the BMW, this was the pattern for the shackle right here. And, you know, this is way too big in reality. And the truth is that when you flex this spring, the most this will move is 1/2 inch. Generally, it's about 1/4 inch. But if you really pushed it hard, that would deflect 1/2 inch. So you can see there's plenty of clearance there. I came up with a smaller version, used the 2 ends and kind of shrunk it down. And so that's the shackle. This is a new component here. And then, you know, the other side here. So I'm happy with that. Here you can see this is the 1x3 frame right here superimposed over the grille. And you can see that it's below the line of the axle. That way the car will have a little bit of a rake to it, which I'd like to see when you look at it from the side. Now I spent quite a bit of time on figuring out this grille, and this is just a guideline. I'm sure it'll be more refined, but I already had some images of the grille, but I went and got some others. Here's one here, a close-up. This is a good one here, this pickup view, because I can just discern a lot more detail from this photograph, like how many ribs there are and the angle of the nose. And on this one, I was able to see what the bottom looked like. So that's how this kind of came along. And then there's a wider trim here that goes around. That's what this is. But this is a good start. I'll, you know, as time goes on, I'll think about it some more. And by the time I do this, I'll have all these dimensions and all this figured out, how I might put it together. And then I had mentioned I'd like to do some kind of cast aluminum window bracket. So here's an idea up there that might work. So this is moving along well. Now I can start to fabricate the axle and these shackles and this component here and weld it on. So that's why I did this, really, so I could build this front axle so I can get it sitting on wheels. And this was an exercise in what it might look like. So not bad. I'm happy with it so far. Okay. I think next order of business is to work on the axle. Well, I think this will be the end of the first video. And the next one I'm going to try to get it on its wheels. And, you know, this was my first model of this particular little hot rod. So, if you remember, I bought a piece of balsa wood, and I'm going to make another model. But I'm going to make it in the scale of 1 inch to the foot, or 1.5 inches to the foot. See, this is 1 inch to the foot. So, I'll have a model this large out of balsa. Somewhere in the middle of this mix, I'm going to do this model. So, it'll be fun. I almost forgot. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.